The forest path was a river of dark, thick mud. The little bunny stepped carefully, paws sinking into the wet earth with every stride. A basket of red apples hung heavy from one arm, the weight grounding the bunny against the lingering wind. Beyond the next bend, the path narrowed. A fallen oak log blocked the way, and there, huddled in the hollow of the wood, sat a tiny squirrel. The squirrel was trembling violently, limbs pulled inward, eyes wide and fixed on the rain-drenched ground. It clutched a broken, useless object in its paws. The bunny stopped. The silence of the woods felt heavy, broken only by the rhythmic dripping of water from the canopy above. The bunny took a slow, deliberate step forward, ignoring the slick mud. It reached into the basket, bypassed the smaller fruit, and gripped a large, polished apple. The bunny extended its arm, holding the apple out toward the squirrel. The squirrel looked up, its frantic shivering slowing as the red fruit came into focus. It reached out, fingers brushing the smooth surface of the apple. The fear in its eyes flickered, replaced by a sudden, sharp intake of breath as the apple was accepted. The squirrel took a small, quick bite, the crunch echoing in the damp air. It let out a soft, high-pitched squeak, its posture finally relaxing against the log. The little bunny watched, then shifted its own stance. The cold air still bit at the squirrel, which began to tremble once more. Without a second thought, the bunny reached back, pulled off the covering it had worn against the storm, and draped the material over the squirrel's narrow shoulders. The squirrel froze for a heartbeat, then pulled the fabric tight, tucking its chin into the fold. The shivering stopped. The bunny sat down on the wet grass beside the log. It opened the basket, revealing the remaining red apples, and pushed them toward the center of the space between them. They sat together under the dense canopy of a large oak tree, the leaves shielding them from the last of the drizzle. The bunny watched the squirrel finish the second apple, then the third, until the basket was nearly empty. The squirrel finished the last bite, stood up, and shook the dirt from its tail. It reached out a small, steady paw. The bunny took it, feeling the warmth returning to the creature's grip. The quiet of the forest floor was shattered by a sharp, piercing sound. A bluebird plunged from the upper canopy, wings beating erratically as it landed on a low branch near them. It let out a series of frantic, high-pitched chirps, hopping back and forth along the wood. The bird turned its head, looking toward the top of the oak tree, then back at the bunny and the squirrel. Its movements were jagged, filled with an urgency that left no room for doubt. The storm had claimed its home. The little bunny stood still, watching the bird, then looked over at the squirrel. The squirrel mirrored the gaze, its ears twitching as it processed the bird's distress. A silent understanding passed between them. The bunny looked up at the towering trunk of the oak, noting the slick, rain-washed bark that would make the climb difficult. It dug its claws into the wood, testing the grip, and pulled itself off the ground. The squirrel followed, jumping to the first sturdy knot in the wood. They moved with purpose, eyes fixed on the target branch above. The air grew thinner as they ascended, but neither looked down. They reached the base of the primary limbs and paused for a second, bracing their legs against the rough surface, ready to start the repair. The work began in the high, swaying limbs. The little bunny found a cluster of sturdy twigs, pushing them deep into the crotch of the branch to form a firm foundation. The squirrel moved with frantic precision, gathering long strands of dry grass and weaving them through the gaps. Suddenly, the entire base shifted, a bundle of twigs sliding toward the edge of the limb. The bunny lunged, pinning the wood against the bark with its shoulder, while the squirrel quickly looped a thick vine around the cluster to lock it in place. The foundation held. They worked for 10 minutes, backs pressed against the rough trunk, fingers moving in a rhythm of tucking, binding, and shaping. The nest took form, a tight circular bowl of woven earth and fiber. As the final layer of grass was pulled taut, the bunny stepped back to inspect the weave. It was solid. The bluebird, which had been watching from a nearby leaf, hopped forward and settled into the center of the new nest. It ruffled its feathers, tested the stability of the walls, and then tilted its head back. A clear, melodic song erupted from its throat, echoing through the branches. The bunny and the squirrel leaned against the tree, watching the bird, the tension of the climb replaced by the satisfaction of a task well finished. The descent from the oak tree was slow, paws finding purchase on the rain-slicked bark until they touched the damp earth. The bunny shook the loose dirt from its fur and started down the forest path as the light began to fade into deep amber. Halfway home, a movement caught its eye. A beetle lay on its back in the middle of the trail, legs waving uselessly in the air as it struggled to right itself. The bunny stopped, found a flat, dry leaf, and slid it gently underneath the insect. With a careful nudge, it flipped the beetle back onto its feet. The creature scurried away into the tall, thick grass. The bunny continued, its pace steady, until the familiar mound of its burrow appeared. It paused and looked back across the forest. High in the oak, a tiny silhouette waved, and above the trees, a flash of blue glided against the twilight sky. The bunny ducked into the dark, quiet entrance of its home. The air inside held the lingering heat of the day. It curled into a ball, tucked its ears against its back, and let the rhythmic silence of the earth pull it into a deep, heavy sleep.